Hey, welcome back. In this video, the first thing I'd like to say is thank you for getting me to 1,000 subscribers. That's really cool. Hopefully can keep the channel growing. I know I kind of have a really tight niche here with the schematics and all that stuff, but hopefully it appeals to someone or whatever. I assume if you're here, you enjoy watching these, so. But thank you to anyone that subscribed, commented, or anything like that. Really cool. So I wanted to do a video where I talk a little bit about my love/hate relationship with Guitar Center. A lot of the gear that I collect comes from Guitar Center. Anytime I buy something like on eBay or Reverb or through a forum or like a private seller, usually it's something that's specific for me that I'm willing to kind of splurge on. But I spend a lot of time, I get on the Guitar Center used listings. If I have some money in my pocket, then I do it every day. And if I don't have any money, then I try not to look so I don't tease myself. But basically I go to their used listings and I check every day to see if there's anything cool or interesting or unique. And then, I usually grab it. Now, the things I'm going to complain about, I want to make sure if you work at Guitar Center that I'm not really complaining about you specifically. My complaints are more about the business model as a whole. And on the one hand, I'm really happy that they buy in used gear. It's great for people trading in their used gear to get new gear. I don't really understand why anyone would actually trade something in, but people do it. And it gives me access to a lot of really cool used gear that I might not otherwise get. Guitar Center usually gives you like 40 to 50% of the value of the item. So like if you have $1,000 guitar and you could sell it on Reverb for $900 in 24 hours, Guitar Center will give you like $400 plus like a 15% off coupon for something in their store. And I get that that's really low hassle compared to packing and shipping and taking pictures and listing your thing on Reverb or eBay or whatever. And then Reverb or eBay, they also take a fee which cuts into the value. And I get it. It's very, you just hand the guitar to someone at Guitar Center or whatever you're trading in and you're just done. The problem is that specific, like no strings attached kind of model is that people who have damaged amps, guitars, worn out frets, all that kind of stuff, they will take advantage of that situation and trade in their damaged thing. If they can get it to work well enough for the 10 minutes that the Guitar Center sales rep is checking it out, and even better if the Guitar Center rep has no idea what they're looking at. So like complicated amps or boutique amps or old guitars. I mean, like, I love Kramer guitars, right? I have tons of those. Seems like only recently have people understood Kramers to have some collector value. There was a really long time there where all those 80s guitars were just kind of like generic crap. I mean, I got multiple high-end American-made Kramer guitars for $400, $500, $600 on the Guitar Center website because whoever traded it in, I guess, didn't really care about it or didn't know about it, and the person they were trading it into figured, it's just some old Kramer, $400, whatever, and now it's worth 3 times that. Not that I'm really complaining. I mean, it's worked out really well for me. And I'd encourage anyone, if you're not super particular, like, I mean, I'm just trying to collect a whole bunch of stuff because it's fun. If you're not super particular about what you're collecting, check out the Guitar Center used listings. But keep in mind, it's basically like buying from a pawn shop. It's not really tested. It's not really, configured or looked over or anything. They pretty much just give it a little look and say, oh yeah, that looks fine. List it or whatever. And sometimes that works out really well. You get some really sweet stuff. I mean, like I got this Kasha Rock Mod head pretty inexpensively, and that amp brand new is $3,500 or something. I don't even know if you actually can still get one. The website's still up, so maybe you still could. And that amp is an incredible amp. I love that amp. And it's an amp that I never would have been able to find before. You know, I was just scrolling through the tube guitar amps list in Guitar Center, and I said, what's that? That looks interesting. And now it's like one of my all-time favorite amps, probably. So, you know, there's really, really unique stuff out there, and Guitar Center is a good way to get it. So I have a lot of good things to say about Guitar Center. I have a lot of bad things to say about Guitar Center, but I think it's more that people are kind of taking advantage of the way the business model works. The biggest problem with Guitar Center is that if something is damaged, or it's marked as vintage or whatever, they really just don't do a good job in fixing them up, like I said, or making sure that they work. And they also will price things, like sometimes I get really crazy deals. Something is really underpriced. Other times something is insanely overpriced and it sits on the Guitar Center website for like months. There's an amp that I want right now that has been on the Guitar Center website since May. It is now October, or about to be October, and the price has not changed on it in all this time. So I just think that's like a funny, I mean, I don't know why things do that, but I've heard stories where things sit on the shelves for 5 years because they refuse to come down on the price. And I understand now, a friend of mine was saying that anything that's marked vintage, Guitar Center Corporate handles the price of. So if it's vintage and Guitar Center Corporate says it's $9.99, then the person at the store, if you call and you talk to the manager and you say, hey, I've seen this thing, it's been on your website for like a year, can you discount it? They actually can't, apparently, which kind of surprised me. I always figured the manager, you know, handled it, but I guess they have to get approval through Guitar Center Corporate to discount it, and there's like a whole, I don't know. Well, the reason why we're sitting on the floor here is this Mesa Mark IV rack mount head I just got, and we're actually in the middle of a hurricane right now here in Florida, so if my lights suddenly go out or you hear wind in the background, that's because we're currently being hit by this hurricane. But while I still have power, at least, I figured I could you know, kind of talk about this. So this amp, I record I have a spreadsheet of all my Guitar Center orders, and I mark whether it had a minor or a major problem and what communication I had with the store. Now, this amp, I would say, has a major problem. And the saving grace to all the negatives that I'm going to say about the Guitar Center system is that they have a 45-day return policy. If it's not working or it's broken or whatever, you have 45 days to take it back. And if you happen to live near a Guitar Center like I do, it's not really a big deal. Obviously, I can't return it right now because of the hurricane, but next week sometime, I will be returning this amp, and we'll talk about why here in just a moment, but that is the one saving grace. So basically, the way I see it, if you got a really good deal on something, go ahead and buy it. If it shows up and it's damaged or it's broken or whatever, you can just return it. I know that they will give you a return shipping label if you call, and you can send it back that way if you're not near a Guitar Center, but usually they don't refund the shipping. Now, if it's actually damaged or not as described or whatever, you can usually talk them into returning the shipping on it. So this amp, unless something goes terribly wrong, I'm going to get the full purchase price back, including shipping. Now, I have this the chassis open right now, and I'm going to use my other camera a couple times. And of course, the obligatory statement: never work on an amp, you know, without doing the safe thing, and you know, never put both your hands in at the same time, and discharge the caps. Make sure you don't touch anything that's going to kill you. Don't plug the amp in, turn it on, and then stick your fingers in there, or something stupid like that. But basically, this amp has a very big problem with the channel switching relays. And this is another thing. Whenever you buy something from Guitar Center, take a screenshot of the purchase page. I took screenshots of this amp right here. In the screenshots, it included the foot switch. When it arrived, it did not come with a foot switch. I have my other Mark IV's foot switch up here, so I can at least test it, but it did not come with a foot switch. And when I first got it, I was able to change channels with the lever on the back here, this little rotary dial. But once I tried to plug in the foot switch, everything went haywire. And I did actually call them and ask them to see if they could find the foot switch. I've had to do that before, where it says like, guitar says it includes the case and the case doesn't come. And I call the store and they say, oh yeah, we just forgot it. Which is really annoying, but then usually they just ship it and then you know, everything's fine. As long as something doesn't get damaged in shipping, of course. But in this one, they said that they couldn't find the foot switch. And I'm not trying to be like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but when I plug a foot switch in, this amp freaks out. And I think probably they got the foot switch, plugged it into the amp, and it went haywire. And they said, well, make sure you don't send the foot switch with that, and then hopefully whoever gets it is a sucker and doesn't, you know, use it that way. Which sucks, you know. But basically you have, I would consider that a major problem. And they did give me a partial refund for the missing foot switch. And I've gotten partial refunds before too, actually. This Marshall JCM 800 up here behind me, I love this amp. It actually came and it was packed so poorly. Basically, they took this amp and they threw some peanuts into a box and then just dropped the amp in it. And the problem with peanuts and amps is that the peanuts all shift to one side of the box. So then when they go to unload the box and they put it on a dolly or they, you know, drop it off the truck or roll it over or whatever, there's no protection. Especially a big oversized box filled with peanuts. There's all this negative space that is just free once the peanuts kind of settle down. Anyway, the head shell was actually cracked on that amp, and I was able to get a partial refund, enough to cover a replacement head shell, which is nice, and that's why I still have that one. But this amp actually came pretty well packed. They took the tubes out and they labeled them, and they did a good job. But I definitely suspect that they knew something was wrong with this amp, and we're kind of hoping to pass it off here. And one of the other reasons why I suspect that, I think like this was my first time. I think maybe I'm just being paranoid, but I buy a lot of stuff. I think I have like 80 or 90 orders into Guitar Center in the last 5 years. And so I kind of know the tricks. And I mean, I can think of 3 separate times where I was buying an amp that was really, really well priced. You know, like a solid 20 or 30% under market value. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be a killer amp. And then I get some kind of like phone call from, most of the time, they just cancel your order and they don't call you or email you or anything, which is really frustrating. You just get this generic automated email that says, sorry, you canceled your order. And I'm like, I didn't cancel my order. What the hell are you talking about? But on 3 separate occasions, I had my order canceled, and either I called or they called me, and they told me that the amp caught on fire. I mean, out of all the amps that I've had and all the crazy stuff that I've done, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but I put a lot of doubt on that 3 separate amps, and they all just happen to be really, really great deals. And they all happen to catch on fire, you know, and oh, you know, we'll call you if we fix it, and then you never hear back because, you know, I mean, one of them was a high watt lead 50. I think it was like $3.99. I was like, wow, what a sweet deal. I've always wanted to try one of those weird high watts with the lead channel, you know, just to see what it sounds like or whatever. And they said it caught on fire or whatever. I'm pretty sure what happened was, you know, somebody that worked there or whatever was like, no, I want that amp. And they were like, yeah, screw this guy that ordered it online, you know. Anyway, but this particular amp, and I'm going to show you kind of what's wrong with it, and I'll show on the other camera here. I disconnected those other cables, and I'll just show you. We'll take a look here. So you've got this little group of caps here, and as you can see, there is a ceramic resistor. Let me turn the camera around to this side. There's a ceramic resistor here, which is not factory, and some kind of weird harness going on in here. And then you also can see the edge of this cap is actually burnt. This orange cap, Jesus. The edge of that cap is actually like burnt. There's a couple of burnt traces on the board. And you can also see this is the foot switch jack right here. You can also see some solder has been touched up. Probably won't come across super well on the camera, but some solder's been touched up there. You know, I looked in there, and this amp's definitely been messed with. You know, this is not a factory Mesa amp right here. And to make matters even worse, let me grab my screwdriver here. This group of caps right here, if I put my screwdriver here and I move them, look at that. Look how they should not be that loose. That is not good. So let me grab the foot switch and I'll show you what happens there. This amp is plugged in now, so make sure you don't touch anything on the inside. I do have it wired up to a speaker cabinet over in the corner there, just for that there's a load. This amp, when I'll plug in, let's turn it on. And I won't even take it out of standby, it's not necessary. So here's the rotary dial in the back, and you can see the channel switching does work correctly. And the EQ light comes on. It's kind of dim there, but it does come on when I try to switch the EQ on in the back, the graphic EQ. Now, when I had this plugged in originally and I had a guitar hooked up, the EQ switch does not do anything when I had a guitar plugged in. There was no audible change when switching the EQ on or off. So that's kind of what tipped me off that something was wrong with this amp. So let's plug this foot switch in. All right, now it's in foot switch mode. There we go. All right, you can hear the relays going. That's what that little ticking sound is. So those all work. Let's go to EQ. Okay, EQ on. All right, loop. Oh, there we go. That's what I was hoping for. So, that chattering is the relays going crazy. Something's wrong here. So the channel switching seems to be working. Something's wrong with the EQ and the loop function. And when I played it like this, all three channels played at the same time, which was really funny sounding, but yeah. Anyway. Now, the thing is, I'm not afraid to get in here with a soldering iron and try to fix this amp. The thing is, if it was just a foot switch issue, or just the channel switching issue, I think maybe I could make a case to keep it. But the thing is, I paid, you know, an appropriate amount for this amp, you know, hoping to keep it. And, you know, I'm looking at multiple hours of my own time working on this amp, or possibly having to send it. I mean, if it gets above my head, and I'm, you know, I've only got really, I'd say, intermediate repair knowledge. You know, if there's anything really seriously an issue here, I might have to send it actually back to Mesa, which would cost me hundreds of dollars to have repaired, plus the shipping time and all the time without the amp. And Guitar Center is not going to discount this amp, you know, an amount that would make it work, or at least it's unlikely. I might call and find out, but unless they're going to do less than half of what I paid for it, I just don't see. Basically, I would need to get this amp at cost to repair it and consider it good. And you know, to make matters a little bit worse, if I do repair it, it's possible this issue might come up later, because and I think this is the nail in the coffin for this one. The circuit traces that are burned out and these weird cap issues over here, that kind of tips me off that something is, it's too much of a problem. You know, if it was just the one thing, I think maybe I'd have it repaired, but it's got multiple problems. So this amp's from 1993. It doesn't surprise me that it probably needs some work. I assume whoever traded it in, you know, just had it on whatever dial on the back, and they played it and they said, oh, you know, it makes noise. Good enough. So anyway, I think that's all I pretty much have for this video. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there, especially if you're in Florida and dealing with the hurricane. I hope everything is okay wherever you are. I happen to be very lucky here on the second story, away from any flooding or wind damage, but I know a lot of people will be affected. I've seen some pictures of floods and stuff that look pretty bad, so stay safe out there and have a good one.